Hi, I'm Kendra Corman. If you're a coach, consultant, or marketer, you know marketing is far from a perfect science. And that's why this show is called Imperfect Marketing. Join me and my guests as we explore how to grow your business with marketing tips and, of course, lessons learned along the way. Welcome back to another episode of Imperfect Marketing. I'm your host, Kendra Corman, and today I am joined by Wes, and I'm super excited to be talking about the world of online, right? Of getting found and being found. And I think, Wes, you work with a lot of construction companies, right? You focused in construction. Talk to us about how you got into the online game and getting help and what I would say is a fairly competitive industry, right?
Yeah, well, it's we've only niched into the construction industry in more recent times, I suppose. So so a digital agency, Uplift 360. So we do websites, mostly in search engine optimization. We're calling it search everywhere optimization because it's not just Google and search engines anymore. But yeah, so I started out in a marketing company, started my own business naively after only working for others for a few years, and so had to learn a lot of things the hard way. But got started after an opportunity to get a few clients, and so did that moonlighting. So in the evenings, built it up so it was a full-time job. That was the first goal: build something that's more than a regular income, which took a little time, and then building out a team and so on. So yeah, digital agency. We're working probably the last 2-3 years. We've drilled into the construction industry purely because we found most of our better clients were in that space. But that's not to say we don't serve people outside of that industry. We definitely do. We've got lots of legacy clients, for example, in all sorts of spaces. So yeah, lots of B2B and so on. So that's kind of how we got here. And it's been a roller coaster ride, really. Fumbling my way forward, I would say.
I think we all do a little bit of that. And I think some of the best businesses are built with those of us who are just imperfectly moving forward. So congratulations on all of that and that journey. And I love talking to digital agencies because there is just so much to learn. I love that phrase, search everywhere, right? Because again, people aren't just Googling things anymore, right? We're asking, I feel like I have to whisper, Alexa, just so she doesn't answer here in the office, because otherwise you'll hear her chiming in, and then saying she can't help with whatever it is I'm asking. Uh, we're using our phones and just AI, right? ChatGPT, Perplexity, all the things. Everybody is looking for people everywhere. So very cool. So let's talk about SEO, right? From a search engine optimization, because you talked about search everywhere. Is that still relevant with AI?
It's always evolved. And historically, people have tried to cheat their way to the top. And so there'd be sneaky little hacks you could do and then, rank a site fairly highly. But then Google would figure out what everyone's up to and then either downgrade or even penalize sites if they've been super naughty. and that was a silly game that everyone was playing for a long time. But these days, it's around building quality content that's targeted to a specific type of person so it resonates. So the good news is the quality really counts now. So, and that because they're far more sophisticated, obviously with AI, they understand the context and nuance of language and what someone might mean when they're searching for a particular something. And they're searching for in different ways. So they're searching whole phrases because they know the AI understands it. And so no longer are we looking at, keywords in terms of plumber Melbourne, for example. I'm in Melbourne, Australia. So it used to be pretty simple, like the service and the location typically. But these days it'll be people searching, even in Google or their large language models, they're searching for precisely what they need. So the type of plumbing they need, if it's emergency plumbing, or the type of pipe they need fixed, or whatever the detail. So you need that quality content that addresses all these types of things that people are looking for. So you've got a chance to show up in Google. So that's kind of where it's moving. It's kind of exciting because it's pushing quality ahead of cheating, which I always think is the best long-term strategy.
I'm not a fan of cheating. I actually had a client ask me, "Well, can't we just cheat?" And they gave me like a idea that people used to use about like 20 years ago, and I was like, "Not anymore." I'm like, "Google will penalize you if you even think about doing that." So, um, no, that's the answer, right? Because it is so tricky. I love how you're talking about how deep people are searching. How do you even figure that out? Like, it used to just be keyword research. Now it's like everything research?
It's incredibly difficult. You can't really track like you once did either, because back in the day, you would target a keyword, you would see where you ranked in Google. Hopefully, you're in the top few positions, and you'd track the clicks, and then you'd track the conversion, and you could give people nice, beautiful reports with all the details, and they could see the return on the investment. It was so clear. But now they're not even necessarily visiting your website, and therefore there's no click, but your brand may have been mentioned. And there's tools to try and determine what large language models you're showing up for and if you're showing up in the Google's AI overview. But it's pretty rough. So it doesn't really give us precise information. It's just a bit of a rule of thumb. So, we had clients for a long time who were familiar with our old way of reporting, and they could see the improvements all the time. But then everyone's traffic started drying up a little bit because they were getting their answers elsewhere. But the good part was their conversions weren't decreasing; they were just having a higher conversion. What it meant was when people were researching in the research phase, they were getting their tools by a whole bunch of mechanisms. But when they're ready to engage with the company, well, yes, they still visit the website because they want to do a thorough check, particularly if it's a large investment. If you're selling a widget for $5, yeah, sure, people won't do any research. But if you're selling anything of significance, any significant investment, then they're going to look at your website. They're going to check for all the trust signals. They're going to check who you say you are, because we all know there's a whole bunch of content and things that might not necessarily be true anymore with all the videos and AI writing content. So we don't necessarily believe what we see or read in the first instance. We're looking for trust signals all the time.
So talk to me about what are these trust signals that you have that people are looking for?
Yeah, well, the things that you can't control are the best. So you've got to earn those to a large degree. So things like Google reviews. So people realize if there's Google reviews and they're positive, they're likely not artificially created. Now, I know there's a few dodgy people trying to create fake Google reviews, but that by and large they get weeded out. It's not very successful. So people know it's highly credible. So if you're getting lots of, as a B2B, you want to make sure you're getting as many good reviews as you can on Google, and there might be other platforms that are suitable for your location as well. Sometimes it's just a gentle prompt. If you've got a great relationship with your customers, your clients, just a gentle prompt to request that they put in a Google review. People by and large are good-hearted people, and they'll help you out if you've got that relationship. So they just need that gentle nudge to do that. And so the other thing too, curiously enough, the stats, and I wish I could remember who did the research, but apparently it's more trustworthy if you have a less than 100%, less than 5-star overall result, which is curious just because we all know humans are humans and we make mistakes from time to time. And it leans into your show to a large degree, that imperfection. We know businesses make mistakes and are imperfect. And when we can see it's legitimately recorded, then something in us realizes we can trust them a whole lot more.
Yeah, I remember it was a long time ago that someone used to write that Amazon actually people bought more things off of the negative reviews on Amazon than the positive ones, because someone would be complaining, "Well, it doesn't have this button or it doesn't do this." And they're like, "I was looking for something that didn't do that." Right? And so they're like, "Perfect." So, and I remember back pre-COVID, back in 2019, we went on a family vacation and I was booking an excursion of some kind, and I still remember I looked at the negative reviews and the way that the company responded to the negative review. I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is so good," because they're like, "It's a scam and it's this and it's that and all these like horrible things," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh," and then they responded, they explained all of it, and I was like, "That makes perfect sense." I understand why he feels like he was cheated, but he really wasn't if you thought about it. And it was like, okay, Like, and then I booked them, right? Even off of the negative piece because of how they responded. So I definitely see that not the perfect score is not a bad thing.
From time to time, people will ring panicky that they've got a bad review that typically they will say they didn't deserve. And sometimes you can see it's clearly nothing that's, remotely reasonable. And so people realize there's just some people out there that do that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, people leave reviews on companies that they had no dealing with. And people understand that kind of stuff happens. But if you've got, 99 great reviews and then there's one random one that doesn't seem like it fits with the others, well everyone's going to realize what that is.
So let's talk about the website, right? Because that's one of those things that people are going to, right, when they're making that big investment. Being a digital agency, what are some of the things that you see people doing that are costing them leads or customers or jobs?
The common one is just too much confusion. So a confused mind can't make a decision. And so by trying to put everything you possibly can do within your website and in the homepage, for example, it's just diluting your core message. So you've really got to be solid on that one core offering that you want to be the showcase. And it might be around the target market. It might be around a particular way in which you do business. But just to think about a really clear and concise, compelling message. What happens over the course of time is you build a website today, and over the years, you'll start adding more things in because businesses evolve and adapt. And rather than removing anything, you just keep adding. So it becomes a big beast. So the time always comes where it's about tearing out a lot of redundant information so that the main messages can sing. And also just having a design that's simple and sophisticated so it guides the eye through the core messaging, because it's all about the message. Whilst the design needs to look suitable and professional and aligned with the brand, it's secondary to the message. So there's ways in which you can design to guide the eye through. That's based on a couple of things. It's based on where we learn things should be on a site. So we know, the contact page is typically the last in the menu. So if you're just trying to find contact info, that's where it belongs. So that's where it should be. The call to action is typically on the right in the header there. So it might be a phone number, or it might be request a quote or whatever you want it to be. But that's your primary call to action place. So that's where you need it to be. And you've got your hero section on the homepage. All these things that there's structures in which we've learned how to get around a website, and people are rushed online. So you don't want them to have to think too much to find what they're looking for.
I think that's so important. I'm working with a client right now on a new website, and I'm like, they give me the list of all the things they want people to do when they get to their site. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I get that you do all that. I get it. Nobody cares. Like, what's the one thing you want them to do when they're there? Like, that's what we're going to put in the header. Like, we can put other stuff, we can navigate to other stuff, but it can't all be on the homepage. And it's a struggle sometimes to get people to narrow it down. Have you done any website? I'm putting you on the spot here. Have you done any websites where you've taken someone with that crowded space and got them narrowed down to like one or two things that they want people to take on the homepage and seen improvements?
Yeah, definitely. So there's one, it's not in our construction industry, but one that springs to mind, and there's probably a heap of those, but the one that springs to mind is a government department, VIFM, Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine. And so the challenge with larger entities, normally I work with businesses, they're not a business, is there's so many silos of departments, and everyone's piece of the puzzle is super important, of course. So everybody wants their thing featured on the homepage. And so before we took it on, it had become quite a big mess. And so they needed to just redefine where they're going and to simplify and structure it up. So we removed so much. Well, they worked on the content in this instance. They had people to take care of that. But just figuring out how we structure it in a way that all the important things are in there because they need them there. They're a government department and people are needing some things. It's structured in a way so those things could be found without losing the core important messages, which were on the homepage. So just a really clean, simple design, and it suits them beautifully well. And they can manage the message that changes over the course of time. They can jump in and change that with events and so on that are going on.
Well, and I bet as a government organization, they probably their customers, right, are probably much happier with the site because they're able to find things easier rather than having to go hunting for stuff. I love that example that you used because you can still have a lot of things on your website. Not all of it is the most important. I think that's the key, right? Is to realize that not everything is the most important. So that's fantastic.
Just to think through that, I don't know how it is in your part of the world, but most of the government department websites here are horrendous, and they're just a mess, and they move things around all the time, and you just can't find what you're looking for because people will link to certain pages and then the links are broken and they have no redirects and so on. So if you do have an overhaul of your website and it is quite large, you've got to make sure you redirect the old to the new, most relevant for that thing, because otherwise people are lost.
That's something a lot of people skip. I remember I worked on a website for a insurance agency, and yeah, we manually did every single redirect from their old site to the new site because there were close pages. Some of the pages there was multiple things on one now, and so I had like 4 redirects into one page. But that way it made sure that there weren't any broken links. So if someone found a social post from 3 years ago that they could get there. And it's something that a lot of people just don't think about and don't take the time to do. So very cool.
It's worth taking the extra time for sure.
So let's talk about the noise, right? We're inundated with marketing messages and things everywhere. How do you work with businesses and organizations to cut through all of that noise and focus on what works? Because I find that a lot of people are always after like that shiny object. But I can tell by the conversation that we're having with search everywhere, optimization and things like that, that you understand what works and you work with your clients to get focused. So how do we focus on that?
Yeah, it is difficult. So everywhere is a lot of places, and that can sound scary and overwhelming. But there's probably only some core key platforms for any business, depending on what it is. If it's B2B, it might be LinkedIn as opposed to some of the others. But it'll also lend itself toward the person. I believe brands these days should be highly geared toward a personal brand where they can. And that's a distinct advantage that smaller businesses have because they're founder led. So they're driving it. And I think that's the way of the future. So if there is a founder led business, you can leverage that personality because I think we're looking for personality in a world of blandness. I mean, everyone can produce polished content at the click of a button. And we don't even know if anyone's read it. It's just published automatically. Some of these tools that I see in websites and social, they just do all the content for you. And how on earth is that going to be aligned and resonate with the audience to the level in which you want it to? So thinking about those core distinctions that make you, that are different, because everyone's talking about your industry in general terms, but only you can speak to those unique aspects that only you believe in, or they might be in some ways repelling people away from you because other people might not align. But those that do believe in your way of seeing how things should be done will be drawn to you. So, but it's almost polarizing. I know there's a lot of horrible polarization in the world right now, politically and so on. But from a marketing standpoint, I think it could be used in a healthy way to stand out in a noisy space where everyone's kind of turning out the same.
I think it's so important what you said. There's a lot of content that's bland and going up there that we don't really know if anybody even looked at. So I think it's important to note, one, you need to look at it, right? But two, I love what you're saying about showcasing your personality. I find that the more of my personality, my thoughts, what I'm doing, when it shines through, it's just amazing how much more people want to engage with me. That really ends up in business. One of my clients that I help them with their emails, she's like, someone's been on my email list for years and I've been sending consistent emails now for months. And she goes, And she finally booked a call and she goes, "Hey, I've been sharing it. Now is just the right time." They had been waiting, right? But they got that message and they're like, "And I love your emails and I know you're the right fit for what I'm looking to do." And it's like, "Yay, it's working like it's supposed to," right? And it's again that dedication to that. And she built that trust, right? That we were talking about just through the consistency, and showing up when she said she was going to.
It's so important, the repetition and frequency. Another, can't remember who gave this information either, but someone was saying that to get unsubscribes in your email list, it happens more often if you haven't emailed them enough because they've forgotten who you are. They've found their way on your list for hopefully ethical reasons. They've subscribed or whatever it is, joined something and become on your list. But if you don't email them frequently enough, they soon forget. And it's just a timing thing often. So they just don't need your thing right now. And that goes for any marketing, social media, and so on. It's great when you can build it around a personal brand. It feels as though when people call me, for example, it feels as though they already know me. You can hear in their voice, it's as if they already know me because they've seen me a bunch of times, probably on social, or, podcasts and so on. So it's just that repetition frequency, being out there.
That's so important, and that's why I keep podcasting because people do feel like they have a relationship with me because they've seen me if they're watching it on YouTube, and hear me if they're just listening on their favorite podcast app. They hear my voice and they understand a little bit more of my personality and who I am and the questions I ask and what I do and how I think because I share that, right? And I think that that's so important. So super cool idea, or super cool insights, and I love how you put that. And so one of my areas of expertise is email marketing, and I had not heard that phrased that way, that they people are unsubscribing because you're not emailing them enough. But I have seen that in my own emails. Because when I wasn't emailing people and I had a sometime once in a while email list that I emailed, I had more unsubscribes, and then you get gun shy because then you don't want more people to unsubscribe, so then you don't bother them for a while. It's not bothering, right? You're adding value, and you need to get over that, but I love that you said that, yes, because they forgot why they subscribed in the first place. You're not emailing them enough. So
Yeah, I
very
reckon
cool.
ChatGPT will tell us where that research was done, but there was definitely proper research around it. So yeah.
Very, very cool. I love that. I'd never heard that before. So thank you for sharing. I love this. It's search everywhere optimization, right? Get rid of the bland, build trust and authenticity through reviews, and you're building your brand personality and really showing how you're different. And I think that those are some really key things that everybody should be looking for in their business. Now, before I let you go, Wes, I do need to ask you the question that I ask all of my guests, and that is that this show is called Imperfect Marketing because marketing is anything but a perfect science. What has been your biggest marketing lesson learned?
I think just getting out there on podcasts. I started getting on the circuit maybe 6 months, just over 6 months ago. I'd done a couple years ago, but I thought, no, it's time to. I was concerned I wouldn't speak well enough and I would be fumbling my way through, and I still do, but I've got better at it. So I think the biggest lesson was just get started. I mean, who cares? Who cares if you make a mistake on a podcast? Only me and my ego. No one really bothers that much. If it was terrible, they just wouldn't publish it. The hosts. So I think just getting started. The biggest lesson is to get started and refine your craft as you go. You will get better, whatever that marketing endeavor is.
I really like that because I was just talking to another one that I recorded earlier today, and we were talking about it. And I said, yes, I do not want to listen to any of my first 100 episodes. And I'm like, sometimes I don't want to listen to the one that I recorded last week. Um, right. Because we do grow and get better. My husband is always telling me how much better I am now than I used to be when I started the show because I would have multiple takes after take after I mean, it would take me a whole day to try and do one episode because I couldn't do it what I felt was the right way, right? And so, but I got out there and I got better and I started listening and being able to ask questions. And all of my guests are fantastic, right? They're sharing knowledge and information that they know. You know this. You do this day in and day out. So I am so glad that you took the risk to get out there and share your knowledge, because I know that people listening and watching learned something from you today, because I know I learned something from you today. And for those of you listening and watching, if you did learn something today, please rate and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. It really helps us out. Until next time, have a great rest of your day.